Hi, welcome to Conscious Living Radio. I'm Tasha Sims and our guest, Jill Prescott, who I'm going to introduce in just a sec, but I want to tell you what inspired this show. So the name of the show is The Invitation is the Same, the Response is Your Choice. And in my world, in my little COVID world, I was noticing how quickly structures and beliefs were things that weren't sustainable or loving seemed to be getting rocked and dissolving really quickly. Not just a little bit, but I mean, poof, like that feeling of poof. All of a sudden something would happen. Synchronicities, there was no gap between what it felt like was if a pure intention or a heart desire. There was no gap between that and reality, or very, very little. It was like manifesting on steroids, I guess, and synchronicity, tons of synchronicity. So here's the story. I noticed on social media, Jill has a post and she's talking about this frequency. And as I read it, I think, oh, you're experiencing what I'm experiencing. And she's saying, anybody want to talk about this who has a podcast? And I'm going, well, yeah, that would be me. And I go to respond and something happens, so I don't. Later in the day, I'm talking to Mark, who, as you all know, Mark Curran produces this show. And we're doing an interview with Teal Swan. Teal Swan does oracle cards. She has a new deck that's come out called The Blind Spot. It's unbelievable. So that's to come. But the point was that Mark got a deck of cards. I did not. And I said, look, if I'm going to do an in-depth interview, I need a deck of cards. I can't possibly dive into why this oracle card, what makes it so unique without experiencing them. So please ask the publishers, and I'm sure they'll send us one. And Mark's kind of like, oh, I don't know about that. And Mark doesn't, but I let it go. So a couple of days go by. I've forgotten about Jill. I've forgotten about the cards. I'm driving in my car, and I'm in a neighborhood where I normally am not. And the phone rings, and it's Mark. And he says, you'll never guess what happened. I walked into the office, and they have sent this deck of oracle cards. So I've got one for you. I went, fantastic. He says, the only problem is, how am I going to get it to you? I went, yeah, well, I'm at 21st and Kingsway right now. He says, I'm at 19th and Kingsway.
Well,
I was like,
Tasha, it was a little different because we were driving and she was asking me for directions of how to get somewhere. And she says, I'm at Kingsway and Night. And I said to her, well, I'm at Kingsway and Night too. And she's like, me too. I'm like, stop the car.
We're like 2 blocks away from each other.
At the same time, we were talking about you and what Tasha's going to go into. So we thought it was just hilarious. Like, we got to do this show.
Well, this is the thing we're talking about. And so he does a drive-by, shoots me the cards. And so catch that interview coming up, because honestly, The Blind Spot, Jill, they would blow you away, because this is not metaphysical, airy, lovely. It is hardball, truth-hitting, really powerful stuff. Anyway, yes, then I went back to Jill. Got to get Jill on the show. Look, this is the stuff I want to talk about, how quickly it's all happening. So let me introduce you, and then we're going to dive right in. Jill Prescott is an international speaker, a facilitator, a writer, and a personal guide. She studied clinical hypnotherapy, HI processing, intuitive energy healing, and various healing and leadership modalities. She's often been referred to as the truth teller, with this being the foundation of her life and work. And she believes that living authentically through speaking our truth is the way to connection and joy. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tasha.
I'm going to toss the ball to you. I want to hear a little bit about your experience during COVID, and also that post. What made you put that post up talking about the frequency and wanting to speak some more about it?
Yeah, so I think the post was about how thin the veils are right now. I think that's how I walked into that conversation. And so my experience with COVID has been that the veils are very thin. So I'm going to preface this a little bit, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
The people who are really experiencing things the way you are, and and I am, and many, many, many other people that I know, are the people who have been doing some sort of work in this arena for a while. So for a lot of us, it's really quite obvious, and we know what's going on really quickly. and we're able to work with that energy in another way. That doesn't mean it's not impacting every person on the planet. It is. It's only a matter of, and this is where choice comes in, it's only a matter of how you then choose to work with the energy. So, or if you even have the awareness that there's a possibility to work with that energy. So for me, since COVID hit, just like everybody else when it first started happening, there was like a, whoa, what is going on here? And our entire world is changing. And then what came right behind it is the veils are so thin right now that pretty much anything can happen. So things that I had been working on for a long time, I've been in a practice of trust and surrender since 2012. That was when I was, laying on the floor of my apartment day after day in a heap and trying to survive the big transition I went through. That was my mantra. I trust, I surrender, without having any idea what that meant or even why I was saying it. And it's been my constant for this entire time. And all of a sudden, when this whole thing started happening, it all like click, 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 fell into place. So I'll give you an example, and I'll try to keep this as short as possible. I have been working for 2 years to get my partner Chris and I on the Sunshine Coast from Vancouver. One little piece of it, the move date was April 1st. We moved on April 1st. We actually moved a week ahead of time. When we were looking for a place to live, we thought we were coming sooner. I found this house that was literally on paper the perfect home for the two of us. I couldn't have asked for anything more. Due to circumstances, I had to set it aside. When we actually got confirmation we were coming, I started looking again. I went back to that house, couldn't get it, started looking again, put it on Facebook, connect. We end up where we're at. It is not at all what I would have wanted on paper, but it is literally the perfect place for us.
Right.
So, and of course, for those of us that have a regular practice of tapping in and opening to guidance and guiding other people, I do a lot of leading meditation, visualization work, and there's just no barrier at all right now. Yep. So I sit, I close my eyes, I begin the same way I always begin, because for me, that is the ritual of making sure that I'm only inviting entities that are in service to others into my space. And that also for people who worked with me for a long time, it actually clears them for their higher self. And then boom, we're into something really powerful.
And I love what you're saying. I love how it would be almost, other than the specifics of your example, when you went click, 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 it exactly felt like that. Like I felt that. And for years, my story is I've been looking for a producer because I know I've got content, but I have no desire in my body to make those things happen. None at all. And when someone out of the blue calls me and goes, hey, do you want to lead a moon ritual? It's like, that's my jam. Right? All I have to say is yes. Uh-huh. And someone does all that stuff. I've been looking for years, surrendered, trusting. So not really looking, just open and going, one day, this is what I need. I can't change that. This is it. And the universe all of a sudden goes boom on a platter. So that's exciting news for people to absorb. I wonder if we can, today's topic, the name of the show, let's start with that. The invitation is the same. The choice is yours. So for you, what is the invitation and what are the choices?
Yeah, so I think the invitation has always been here and it's always been the same. It's the invitation to understand that we live not only in the human form, but also in the form of the source of love, spirit, spirituality. There's another aspect that creates a space in which we are of the whole, we are of the oneness, and yet separate in our humanity. So as much as we are of the oneness, we occur in the human form as separate beings. And so the invitation is to live from both of those places simultaneously. So to be able to tap in, to connect to outer realms, to other timelines, connecting to earth not only as the physicality of the earth, so hands in the garden digging things, but also to the energy of the earth, the planetary vibrational existence that it's in, which is ahead of a lot of human beings right now. So that's the invitation to say, okay, maybe, even if I don't believe it right now, maybe it's possible that there's something more than just I'm born, I live, I die. So, and then the choice really is constant. We are constantly given choice. There's a very solid reason why we were given free will. And that is because, we could go into a big one. I'm going to say this, and then you can tell me if you want to go in that direction or not. But my belief is, and I share this belief with many, many other humans on the planet, that we are creation wanting to experience itself. So in that, that's where the free will comes from, because no matter what choice we make, it's still in service to creator creation, even if we're choosing to be of service to self rather than in service to others, which is a very, we think of it as good and bad, right and wrong, but it's really not. It's only creator having a different experience of self. So the choices are continual, and there's no wrong choice. It's, in the way of, there's no wrong choice. It's only a matter of how you want to choose to experience this life while you're in this incredible, accelerated opportunity for a vibrational evolution, because you're human. There's nothing else like this in the universe, nothing else like it.
I wonder too, as I'm listening to you, because my answer would be a little different, but I wonder if the invitation, because we said the invitation is the same, the choice is different. Maybe the invitation also has nuances.
100%.
Right? And so when I listen in, when I tap in, for me, my anchor is, it's a really simple question. Will you serve the force of love in this moment? That's it. Yes.
That's right.
No. And I hear you saying, it's okay. If I said no, that's as okay as if I said yes.
Absolutely.
But it puts me on such a simple trajectory, because it's like, it's not complicated. What would love do right now? What would love see in this moment? What would love hear? What would love say? And can I be that conduit? For me, that uncomplicates a mind that's very complicated. Like I get into, right? Does that fit? Can
totally
it be
resonates.
The nuances
Absolutely.
can be different for each person, even in the invitation.
Sure. And, well, yes. And the language can be different.
Right.
So we're all going to resonate in a different language.
Yeah.
And I think the invitation, the essence of the invitation is the same. So when you're saying, what would love do? You're actually asking, how can I be of service?
That's right.
To others.
And myself.
Of course, because you are we don't ever get left out, right?
Right.
And
because in that moment, you're being true to yourself, because you're in touch with your essence. Yeah.
Well, and don't forget, you're always a part of the whole. So when we talk about oneness and we talk about being of service to others, we're included in that.
Yeah.
We're not separate from it. So, when the choice is, am I of service to others in this moment, or am I of service to self in this moment? And don't get it twisted. Being of service to self is a very different thing than self-care. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about whether we're going to be selfish, whether we're going to make a choice from fear, or we're going to make a choice from love. That's it.
Sorry. So when you say service to self, you're talking which part's fear? Fear,
right there. But see here, remembering this nuance, that being of service to others includes you. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I was going. Yeah.
Right. So you're geared towards being of service to others, which means that you are in service to love, just like you said.
Yeah.
You are included in that. When we are of service to self, we are coming from fear. Service to self means that we need to have more than the other person. We need to climb over top of them. We need to take care of ourselves. Don't worry about anybody else. That is a very different thing. Well, kind of. I mean, we have ego even as service to love. So there's nothing wrong with ego. It's just a matter
but
of.
The point is that the part of you that is not ego is not the part that needs toilet paper. Right? Like it's not relevant even. The fear-based part of you, I'm not making ego bad, not at all, but it's a human aspect that feels lack or fear or, all those things. Whereas
you're referring to like the people who are buying way too much toilet paper. I got it now.
Yeah. Or whatever you're afraid will happen. Fear itself. Yeah. Again, am I in service to fear would look like one thing.
That's right.
Right?
Exactly. And I'm in a service to love. It looks like something completely different. Yes, exactly.
So we did a show called Who Do You Want to Be during COVID? And we had this really cool graph that had the fear zone and behaviors that were in that zone. We had a learning zone where you were learning how to adapt and how to be a certain way. And then we had a growth zone, which was really on your edge, right? Where you're in these, like I loved it. It was like Jean-Luc Picard going into these unknown territories, right, in yourself. Yeah. I wonder, do you think that is a decision, or do you think that it's more about where one is in one's evolution?
Oh, so the decisions that you've made up to this point determine where you are in your evolution. So the choices that you've made, those choices are going to determine where you're at in your evolution. But keeping in mind that this is an expansive conversation over many, many lifetimes. So if we bring it into the human, to our human experience of this, then we're always going to make choices lined up with where we are currently in our evolutionary state, in the vibration that we happen to be existing in. And remembering that there's no point in this human life in which we 100% shed all of our past experiences and the impact they've had on us. So if I pin that thing up on my wall, the graph that you were talking about, I would say that I swing between the three of them many times a day. So, and the moment that I am conscious of the fact that I have choice again, then yes, I'm most likely, not always, but I am most of the time going to choose the growth. But there's going to be times when I'm going to ride that middle, and there's going to be times when I've caught myself going, what is going on here? Like, I have fallen back into this place of something here is going to kill me, which is where the fear piece comes from. So remembering in our humanity, choice only arises when we recognize we have a choice, and we forget a lot. We forget a lot.
So maybe we could offer some tools, some real practical things that people can do. I'm always a big fan of offering that in this show. So let me phrase it this way. What do you think is most helpful? Or let's start with something that's helpful. It's just shifting the barriers that might get in the way of tapping into the wise part of you, the well of love in you.
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is there's got to be, you have to recognize. You've got to develop the muscle of recognizing when you have allowed yourself to fall into that place, or when you have fallen into that place of fear, when you've fallen into that spin, when you're heading down that rabbit hole. You've got to recognize that. So there's a real practice of witnessing yourself and your behaviors and the thoughts going on in your head. And the next thing is to have some sort of an interrupt. And for me, that interrupt, especially when I was first starting to learn this stuff, had to have a couple of different components. It had to be physical. So I had to do something physically to my body to interrupt it. And I had to use a sound of some sort. So when I caught it, I would either literally turn myself around in the other direction, just physically, consciously move my body in the other direction, and then make whatever sound wanted to come out of my body. And it would cause an interruption. It would cause a pause. Now, we get more and more practice at these things. Now, for me, it's more of a like, Where'd that come from? And then if I need to, I take a little break. I'll go and put my feet in the grass. I'll stop for a minute and do a couple breath work exercises, something very simple. And then if I'm really trapped in it, I'll set it aside and come back to it. So there's a decision of, I get this. I don't know what's going on. I'm all wrapped up in this, but I can't deal with it right now. So I'm going to just wrap you all up in a little ball of light. And I'm going to put you over here and I'll be back in an hour.
I love that. So it sounds like your initial map for how to interrupt the loop, or the fear-based loop, because it is a fear-based loop, you knew it required movement, some sort of, and sound. And that's, I think, a really important personal thing for someone else. The question simply is, what would be different? What would you do right now as opposed to your norm? How would you most radically interrupt it? So it's cool that you got such clear information that then gets more subtle, so you're not on the street needing to yell and turn. Can I tell you what my latest is? It really was, I only got it last week, which is amazing to me, right? You think you're at a certain place and it's like, yeah, I'm doing it. But when that tsunami of fear comes over, and it could be any reaction to anything, for me, it's often a very personalized, I'm making meaning. I know I'm making meaning of something that's happening. I know it's probably not that person's intention. All that my little brain gets now after all these years of doing this work. But in the body, and I know it's my little kid, still not enough. It's like I keep coming back. It's like heartburn or something. It just keeps coming back. And so the recent one I got, which it tickled me, and maybe this is helpful to listeners, I don't know. It was to imagine, because I know a lot of people have had helpers and they work with, whether it's angels or entities or whatever. I'm not that person. I have direct contact, and I've never needed, everything translates kinesthetically. So I haven't needed stories or names or visuals, none of it. And sometimes with all the stories, it would take away from me being able to get the gifts. That's just me. Yeah. And for the first time, I asked myself in that moment, who could help me? And I've been working with feeling helpless as a kid, empowering myself, but loving the part of me that is still helpless for a long time. And I'd never really included another human being in the work internally because I was tapping in directly to source to help me. But this was like, what human was what popped up intuitively? And the answer was, it was shocking to my system to go, whoa, there isn't one. I was stunned that I could not come up. I have a great imagination. I could not come up with a human. But all of a sudden, this animal appeared. And it was a wolf. And I literally, in this tsunami of feeling, leaned into his body. It was a he. And I swear I was surrounded by, like, putting a shawl of safety on. And all of a sudden, everything was soothed in my system. And when I looked at that triggering event, it was like, because I integrated. It was almost like putting on a wolf head, right? At the same time that I leaned in, it became, I can put this head on. And all of a sudden, I was the wolf. And I went, well, it is what it is. I really don't know what's happening with her. I really don't. I know that I can soothe myself this way because I'm okay. Like it was just a lowering. But what was that? It was trusting this weird intuitive information that it had value. And when you step into it and keep going with it, I think it's miraculous. I think it's our superpower, actually.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you're talking about the intuition part too, because that's one thing that there's a tremendous availability of that energy right now. There's all kinds of, if your listeners have ever been interested in developing their intuition, knowing more about it, working on it, opening it, connecting with it more, now is the time. Yeah. Now is the time. You will have a much easier time than we even would have, had 3 years ago. There's just something about this particular, and I, as far as like logically, what makes a lot of sense to me is that we're quieter right now. we're home. We are not so busy with everything. There's less available to distract us. And so it takes being able to be willing to be quiet within yourself in order to really hear your intuition. So what's beautiful is if you work on developing it now, it doesn't go away when it gets loud again. So, you know, when you work on it by being quiet and in yourself, and, you know, I don't know, I think you do this too, Tasha. I take myself away on silent retreats a fair amount. And that really had been the space in which I elevated the capacity that I have for listening to my intuition and understanding how my particular intuition works.
Yes. Yes.
So, and then out in the world, even if I'm in a crowd, even if it's loud, even if there's, you know, 50 things going on at once, I still hear it. I don't always listen, but I still, I can't deny that it's there.
Yeah, it's like a radio dial that you can tune into. You know what's interesting about you bringing that up is I was thinking the earth has gotten, there's less seismic activity going on because there's less cars and trains and noise, and the planet, literally the crust is moving less. Like scientifically, I read this story on it and I went, wow, we're getting quiet, the earth is getting quiet, everything is, there's a peacefulness at the core of all this, which, let me sway it to this, because I know COVID has been turned into this enemy that must be fought. And I wonder if your perspective is a little bit different. I have a funny feeling it might be. How do you see this as, I mean, we've touched on it a lot, but go for it. How do you see this as opportunity?
You know, I think that, first of all, anything that we decide we're going to fight is not going to turn out well for us. One of the, you know, main universal laws is what we resist will persist. So fighting it will never work. It doesn't work. I mean, how many millennial have we been fighting wars that solved nothing? It's ridiculous. I mean, we're ridiculous about the whole thing. So, and I'm going to just mention this about the earth because, and I wonder if you felt this, I have a real sense there's something happening where, because we're getting quiet and the earth is getting quiet, we are actually beginning to line up our pulse in our bodies with the earth. So our heartbeat is lining up with the earth's heartbeat, and it's happening en masse. So I think that's another really beautiful thing coming out of this. And you know, I also don't want to, I also think it's very important to mention that there are people that this COVID thing is causing tremendous harm. There is legitimate suffering going on right now. And I am, you know, I know for myself and I know you, we're very, very privileged in this time. Yeah. Very privileged. We do not have to worry about whether or not we're going to have food. We get to keep working. We're staying connected. You know, this is not going to kill us. There's a very different experience out there for a lot of other people. And because of that, we have a responsibility to do things like what we're doing right now, in my opinion, to have these conversations, to perhaps offer something as a possibility on the planet, because this is going to kill a lot of people in a lot of different ways. People will suffer. So we have to keep that in mind as we're having these very privileged conversations about having a tremendous amount of empathy and understanding that it's not the same for everyone. And even with that, every single person still has an opportunity right now to have some sort of a shift happen. It may not be a massive leap into what I'm feeling is possible for myself and other people that I know, but 1 degree towards the light is better than no degrees towards the light.
Yeah.
Well, so there's an opportunity here for all of us to spend more time being quiet, to face the fears that we have been living with that are completely invalid, to shift things that we have found impossible to shift in the past. And we're seeing it. We're seeing people defying the open the city orders of a lot of the government officials. They're saying, people are going, no, like, we are taking our autonomy back. We are doing for ourselves what the government has failed to do for us for a very long time. So there's an opportunity right now to put things back in balance, where we are the government, we are the rulers of ourselves. Therefore, we are the rulers of our town, of our country, of our planet. So there's a lot of opportunity happening right now. I would love to stop hearing people say when things go back to normal, because they are never going back. That is, the door to the past and how things were is closed. So anybody who wants to turn around and head back that way is going to either fall off the edge of the cliff or knock themselves out trying to run into that door.
Yeah.
So, this is the time to and the thing is that it's the same with what's happening moving forward. We have had no experience of what's coming. There's no predictability for what's happening. We like to think that there is. Like, I like to think I know what's coming, and I like to think I know what's happening. I know nothing about what's really going on.
Well, and so it's the sign of, even in psychology, a highly differentiated person has a degree of comfort with ambiguity.
Yes.
We don't know. Can you be okay and well within that?
That's right.
In the present moment, right?
And
how would that look?
Right there, because we are being forced to be present.
Yeah.
Where it's just how it's going to go. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I answered your question or not, but.
Well, I think we did. We touched on it. Okay, how about this one? They say that motivation, so people started off, it was interesting to watch. People went down a couple of different tracks with self-isolation and but there was certainly a group of people went, oh, I'm going to now write my book. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to all this time, da, 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 da. And then there was another school that went, oh, I'm going to become the queen of the couch. And again, I don't know that it matters what you choose. What was illuminated so clearly was that your response to your response was the key to whether this was growth and simply that. Just give me your take on your response to your response. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like your okayness with whatever it was that you were choosing, because most people don't. Like, they'll make a choice and then they'll feel guilty, or they'll make a choice and then they beat themselves up, or I didn't do anything today and they feel bad about it. If that degree of perfectionism and being driven, if that could dissolve, I would be in heaven. I think that would be a remarkable addition to the frequency of the planet.
Yep, 100%. And it's all really everything that we're seeing is just an amplification of what's always been here for us to play with. So it's never really been what we do. It's always been how we are with what we do. It's never about the doing. It's always about the being with something. So whether I grow a garden or I don't, doesn't matter. If I'm going out to that garden pissed that I have to go out there and water it, then what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there really is, it is a repetition of the same thing, but only the impact of it is faster. The impact of it is more evident really quickly, and the karma rebound is pretty much instantaneous.
Right. Okay, so this is a good time to start new projects, find your life partner. Let's talk about manifesting, because that might help perk people up. There might be people struggling, going, okay, what can I do? Let's say there is someone who's struggling. And you're right, we're very privileged, unbelievably privileged. So apparent. Yet, what could you say to support people to kind of help them fill with a little bit of optimism and some hope around
what's happening right now?
Bringing things in what they need in their lives. Yeah.
Yeah. The manifestation conversation is vast and huge and wide and deeply misunderstood. So, for somebody who hasn't had the experience of what that feels like or looks like and haven't done the steps that, 7 years I practiced trust and surrender before I understood it to the degree in which manifestation could be handily had, created fairly quickly. The practice of trust and surrender in my mind is the work for us. Manifesting has nothing to do with us. It is not something that we do.
Not our job.
Result. It's not our job. It's a result of being in that place. So there's a few parts to it. I think the first part is as we have to do our human aspect of it. So we do have to take actions that point us towards what it is that we in our human condition believe would be best for us, with no attachment to whether or not we're right. So, I give the example of when I went into the car business, it's, I don't know how long ago now, 35 years ago or something like that. I had no idea that the job I ended up doing existed. I had no idea that job existed on the planet. I needed somebody who had that knowledge to say, there's this job and you'd be good at it. So if when I was looking for a job, I was looking for jobs that I thought that I knew existed. Mm-hmm. Had I been stuck in that, like if I'd have said, well, that can't be right because I didn't know it existed. I'd have never got into it, right? So it's the same thing for us. You're looking for a job. Look for a job. Work on your skills. Lean towards things that make you happy in that way. And then let that surrender piece happen and stay open to the things that you have no idea are even out there yet to show up. But we turn away because we don't recognize them often. Mm-hmm. So
the key to surrender, because you said the word, like that sounds like a very important frequency to be in. Maybe there's something you could say about that.
Yeah. So trust and surrender to me go hand in hand. Surrender does not mean that we give up our lives and lay on the couch and hope something happens. It means that we surrender the potential result. So if I'm looking, let me stick with a job because it's easy. If I'm looking for a job, I'm going to clean up my resume. I'm going to put it out to lots of different places. I'm gonna connect with people I know in different industries that I might be interested in. And then I'm going to surrender the result so that I now stay open to all kinds of possibility. So, and the trust piece, it's such a, Tasha, this isn't something that happens overnight.
Yeah. Well, the question for me is, what are you trusting? I needed that because I used to go trust, like what, people? And I didn't. Right? Yeah. But no one's asking me to.
That's right. Right. Nobody's asking you to trust anyone.
Right.
The interesting thing though, is that once you trust in, even if it's just this, if you can trust in the idea that there's a greater plan, if that's all it is, I trust that there's something bigger than me happening. I trust that I'm not just gonna live, eat, shit, and die. Like if I can trust that there's just something beyond that, that's a great place to start. Mm-hmm. Because I don't know about you, but what I found is when I really sunk into trust and trusting in the fact that there is something much greater than me and that I am safe, there's nothing to be afraid of, then I could trust people.
Right. And that it's a co-creation. So I'm in charge of my part, but I'm not in charge of the other, which is what you're talking about, those results. Yes. I think the other piece for me that really landed was this idea that if my heart desires it, it exists. It would never be I really, really long, like it's a pure intention yearning, that it's not possible. I wouldn't have it if it was not possible. So that correlation for me was mm-hmm. lovely. And then it just became, well, space, time. Okay. I don't know. I don't.
Maybe this lifetime, maybe not. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So what's meant for us will always end up with us. If it's meant for you, it will show up. There's no doubt about that. So, what's challenging, and I think it's almost like, I know for myself, the more that I figure out, the less I understand the more I understand that I don't know anything. Mm-hmm. So the more that I kind of like get a little grasp on something, and then you're like, holy Christmas, that just opened up a whole other thing. Like, now what? So, be prepared. You start stepping into this and having a little like crack of light in the whole shell that we've created around ourselves, and you're going to become an explorer, and it will last the rest of your life. You can't shut the door, unfortunately. I
it's like, stop growing now. Okay, stop. The seed is planted, you've watered it, it's turning into this massive bamboo. Run away. Stop. No.
Right. Yeah. I tried to back out a few times for the first few years, but
let's keep going. Did we finish manifesting? Because I want to give them a cohesive kind of, here are the steps. So that's your beginning.
Yeah. And so again, I think this is we could literally have 5 shows on manifesting alone, and that. So I also, I want to poke a hole in the idea that there's a simple formula, and that if we want it bad enough, we'll have it, or that, because it's such a trap in so many ways. So really, I think I just want to say that if you want to work on something, work on trust and surrender. Read the books, do the research on it, follow people who are in that place where they are actually doing that, and really get that there's no overnight solution, and it's going to be a lifetime of it. But what's really beautiful is when you step into it, something begins to open. And the more that you open, the more that this possibility starts to open, these little filaments of light start coming in, the more you naturally start moving towards it. So understand, we don't have to do it all. There's only, there's pieces that we work on, and then there's all of this support. It's like when you say yes to this, stuff will show up. People will show up, books will show up, conversations will happen, and the things will start to drop in. Oh, that makes sense. Now that lines up. Let me do a little more exploring there, because, I think we got really, really messed over with some of the stuff that was taught before and is still being taught today. And it's causing tremendous suffering because people are studying the short version of this, and then their new house isn't showing up, and then they assume they've done something wrong.
Right.
So even if you have no desire to study any of this, even if you don't, it's not your thing, it's not your conversation, if you be in the practice of surrender and trust, even go back from that, if you take on the practice of looking for love in all things, you will open the door to manifestation.
That's so good.
Simple.
Yeah.
What does it look like to look for love in all things? Set your judgment aside, look for love. And it will crack the door to manifestation.
I like that. What is it? And for me, it's always the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. What does it look like? What's it sound like? What's it feel like? And then you've covered your bases. You've made it real. The body doesn't know if it's real or you're making it up. It doesn't matter, right? In that moment, if it's in the present, you're having the experience. Have it. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to touch a little bit on the whole idea of masculine and feminine energies, because that's been, I think I told you I did a moon ritual last week, and it was interesting how archaic it felt to only include women in my body. I could feel it. I kept wanting to go. I mean, as much as there's always been, I come from a world of women's circles, and there's such beautiful power in celebrating the feminine, the divine feminine. But I could feel so strongly called to inviting the feminine in everybody. right? And no longer making that distinction. So maybe we can start on defining masculine energy, feminine energy. I think you're with me that it's in everyone, both, right?
Yes. Yeah.
See, took a risk there. I don't think we've had this conversation, but I can feel it, Jill. I just can feel it. I know. And I want to talk about what that therefore looks like, because when we keep separating, all this separation is not helpful. There's something being called that goes way beyond gender, and it's, I pass you the ball. Well, let's touch on that.
Yeah. So a dear friend of mine, Tien, he really speaks beautifully to this. And one of the things that I from his teachings that I really, really get, that I didn't get before, is that there's a vast difference between male, female, and feminine, masculine. Mm-hmm. Male, female describes body parts.
Right.
Masculine and feminine are energies. So, that's just a very loose, tiny piece of what the beautiful teachings that he has around all of this. But the masculine and feminine energies, they must exist. They do exist in everyone in equal measure. And just like with everything else, what we put our focus on is what we experience to a greater degree. So again, remembering that we are creator experiencing creator. How we are showing up in the human form is an expression of how the creator wanted to experience itself through this particular body, sexual orientation, skin color, and energy. So when we're talking about masculine and feminine energy, there's something for me inherent in me that in this particular lifetime identifies much more with the energy of the feminine at this point in my life.
Right. I was going to say, because back when you were in sales,
I definitely identified as the masculine energy.
Yeah.
So for me at this point, I'm learning that when I am, and there's something also about being in the relationship I'm in, when I am in a place of honoring both of those energies within me, there's a vortex that starts to happen in which I have access to much more than if I reject one or set one aside.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me too is understanding, and it came again, not through my mind, but through a body experience of what the marriage inside me would feel like, and how both are essential and necessary. The feminine without the masculine in service of making it happen is just airy-fairy. Like it's very not substantial. And the masculine without the feminine heart is just driven and gets real tired and burnt out. But the marriage is the beauty for me. And I realized, I may have said this before, where I realized I had my masculine as on top of my feminine. I always had a feminine heart. It was intuitively my essence. And yet people would receive the masculine. And I would be stunned, like, how come? Like, I thought, what a weird projection you've got going there. I'm not doing that. But what I realized was I had it, the way I was presenting or sending it out of my body literally was reversed, because the masculine in patriarchal culture just seems to be a safer, more valued essence. And so learning to reverse that took huge risk, going, wait a minute. I'm going to feel my heart. I'm going to let it be seen, and I'm going to trust and surrender to the fact that my masculine's holding me all the time. The divine masculine is always holding me. What would that look like going out into the world? And it's completely different.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. There's a different experience of you, and there's a different experience for you.
Yeah.
From both of those things. And this is this is also something that is being worked out at this time.
What's that mean?
Well, just like a lot of things, this is something that it's being worked out. We're being invited into being curious again about it, we're being invited to take another look at this and see what resonates for us and what doesn't, to get rid of the things that aren't serving us and keep the things that are. Yeah. And it's different for every human. And there's that piece, but there are, of course, overarching themes that if we as a whole signed up for, things would change dramatically on the planet, and we would move with much more ease and a lot more of us into the vibrational existence that the planet's in right now that we haven't caught up to.
Nice. So, well, we only have a few more minutes. I want to make sure that you tell our listeners about any future events you've got coming up or offerings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I lead their Circle of Truth online, and essentially it's an opportunity to come into a group, and we, because I am guided, I can't say this is exactly what's going to happen. However, essentially it's an opportunity to be in a group visualization or meditation, just to move into a slight trance state. And the intention always is to help people find their own internal guidance, to tap into their own internal wisdom. And also, there's two more pieces that have come up really strongly since I've started doing these again, since the COVID thing happened. The other thing is to learn to be open to receive the beautiful, powerful love energy that's circling us right now, that we're swimming in. And also that similar but slightly nuanced, slightly different flavor of energy that comes from the planet Earth, but then also an opportunity to be of service. So I have found that I'm called each time. There's been a desire within me to create something in that visualization in which we are offering that love and support external to the circle that we happen to be in online. Mm-hmm. So there's been some really beautiful stuff around that. What I am moving into now is an opportunity for people to kind of create almost a private offering for themselves and their friends. So someone would host one of them, and I would come in and lead. So let's say that nice. You've got, a group of people. I used to do these live. I used to do the guided meditation and channeled healings live in people's homes. And so very similar thing, but online now. So if someone would like to host one of those, I do all of the setup and do all of that thing. They're by donation, so there's no prohibitive thing around money for people. And I help you get it all set up, and then you invite some people, and we have a lovely hour and a half together.
Lovely. So tell our listeners how they're going to find you. Where do they go?
So if you type in Jill Prescott onto Google, you will find me. You'll find me and a cook in England who's no longer with us. But and my website is just jillprescott.ca.
So final minute. I'm going to hand you the magic wand. I feel like Romper Room, she used to have that thing and she'd see people's faces. For me, it's always this magic wand. I want people to have wishes. I want to give that to you, Jill, and say, what's your wish for the world? From your heart to the world.
The wish that I have is that people really understand that this is a time of transition. And in a time of transition, the most powerful thing you can do is to stay present. Take care of yourself. Take care of the ones that you love. Take care of the wider circle. One of the easiest way for us to shift ourselves out of that fear state is to be of service. So in this time, find ways of being of service in any small way you can. And you will be a participant in this shift we are, like it or not, moving into vibrationally as a human race.
Beautiful. It's been a pleasure. It's been so much fun.
Always, yeah.
And I'll see you on the Sunshine Coast one day when those ferries start again.
Yeah, and you'll have no excuse because you have to drive right by me to get anywhere.
Thanks, Joe. You've been listening to Conscious Living Radio on Co-op Radio, 100.5 FM in Vancouver. Of course, the station's on lockdown, so we're working on Zoom. And then you get to listen to the show Wednesday night, 6 to 7, but we're also posting this on Facebook. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everybody.